Hey everybody, it's Tiger here, leader of the Common Striders, and here I am with my Narukami Dragonic Vanquisher deck profile. Now, before you all saw us, open boxes, and well, one box really on the channel, but you saw us open up and saw that we pulled Dragonic Vanquisher. I'm the Narukami player of the group, and here goes my deck profile. Now, this is a deck profile I worked on just for fun. Now, I know there's like competitive players out there that will be like, run 4 copies of this, or why aren't you running that? But I play on locals. I'm a local player. So when I made my deck build, I wanted to put in tech cards just for the fun of it, just to show you what Narukami's specialties are and the real focus of the deck. So, starting off, we have right here Barret Draco Kid. As a starter, when rolled upon, draw a card. They all do the same thing. Now, the reason I'm not running Harbinger Draco Kid or Spark Kid Dragoon is because I love Draco Kids. Whenever I get a chance to put a Draco Kid in a deck, Aqua Force, Link Joker, any of the decks, Pure Chronicle, I will hop on that opportunity. I love Draco Kids as a thing, and this one is the best one. Harbinger Draco Kid looks weird to me, so I just went with Barret Draco Kid. So that's the start off. For the trigger lineup, I am running 2 front, just because of, when you want to hit that high number thing, it'll pop up. You really don't need fronts in this deck because the units are going to hit their numbers when they need to. So I just put in 2 fronts just for the fun of it, just so that way it'll be there. But then to make up for those 2 fronts, we're running 4 critical triggers of Draco Kid and then 2 more crits of Malevolent Djinn. Like I said, I love Draco Kid, so Spark Edge Draco Kid was perfect. They gave us the Draco Kid crit, and Malevolent Djinn is there just for the crit. But when most of your units are hitting big numbers, you want to hit critical triggers to end the game. If you're on Gauntlet Buster, you can end the game. If you're on Drill Dragon, you can restand and hit. And then Vanquisher, if he gets a crit, or any of your other units, you're going to hit really big. And with the big numbers, with Vanquisher builds, you just want to crit in the game right then and there when your opponent's least expecting it. So we have 6 crit. Rounding up, we have, as you know, 4 heal triggers. Because in case you don't want to lose the game, you want to run the 4 heals. You don't want to lose because they hit you too hard and you can't heal. And then with the 4 heals, you're also running 4 draw PGs, just to protect yourself when you need to, and the draw helps when you need to go through the deck faster. So that's the trigger lineup. Moving on to the grade 1s, I run 3 copies of Mighty Bolt Dragoon. Now some people might say, why not 4? Well, I only run 3 because I want, again, more tech options. But Mighty Bolt Dragoon's skill is simple. When placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, check top 5 cards of your deck, add a grade 3 from among them to the hand, and if you added one, well, shuffle your deck, and if you added one, choose a card in your hand and discard it. So, the real win that is to get into your grade 3s faster. You can get Vanquisher faster, you can get into Jaggy Shot Dragoon faster, but then if you see, Drill Dragon or Gauntlet Buster, you can get that easily too. His other skill is when a card is bound, he gets plus 5k during your turn if any card was bound. So you can use any other skills to bind your cards or your opponents. Bam, you got a 13k booster. Now, I run 2 Rising Phoenix, and the real combo piece with them is if you have Rising Phoenix in hand, and you play him, and you have the discarded card, you can discard Rising Phoenix, because that's your perfect target. Rising Phoenix skill is when it's in drop zone, when one of your opponent's rear guards is bound, you can call his unit from drop zone, and it gets plus 3k. Now, you can have a booster, an attacker, and with Vanquisher, he becomes an amazing attacker. But, as you see, by discarding a card, by discarding Rising Phoenix, he'll be in drop zone, and then you can just easily get it back with its own skill. So, if you need a perfect discard target, that's the perfect one for Mighty Bolt here. Now, here goes the techie cards I run. Well, not even yet. Now, for 4 copies. 4 copies of Desert Gunner Bajan. Bajan's skill is when it's bound from your hand, you can call it a rear guard. So, with the skills of Vanquisher, there's units that they make you to bind a card from your hand, but you think that's a minus. But if you have this card, it automatically becomes a plus because you can call a new unit for free after paying a cost. And then, when it's placed, you soul charge one. Vanquisher needs a grade 3 in soul, so you can probably soul charge from that. And then with a lot of cards in this deck, there are a lot of soul blasts, so you can rebuild the soul kind of fast with that skill right there. So here are the techie grade 1s. We run 1 copy of Lightning Hope Helena, and we run 2 copies of Desert Gunner Gaibin. Well, Helena is the counter charge for Narukami that's been out since set 1. When your opponent's rear guard is bound, you Soul Blast 1, counter charge. So with the Soul charging in this deck that we have, we can rebuild the Soul fast, and with this you can get your Counter Blast back by counter charging it whenever you do what Narukami does. With Desert Gunner Gaibin here, is at the end of the battle, your Vanguard attack, you choose one of your units and it gets +3. Now that's alright, but then its other ability can give that unit the ability when it attacks, your opponent cannot guard with Sentinels. So you can give that to any of your units when your Vanguard attacks. So with 2 of them on field, you can give +3k to another group of units that can now have guard restrict. And then if you have a critical trigger on your Vanguard attack, that unit now has plus the crit power and the guard restrict, and it's just all perfect. Now, one thing you can also do is when you ride in the Drill Dragon, since he is attacking twice, you can use Gaibin's ability to give Drill Dragon the guard restrict, and then also give it to another unit if you have 2, and then when he restands, you give it to another 2 units, making your pretty much 4 of your attacks that turn perfect. Your opponent cannot perfect guard against them, so it's just really good. He's a good grade 1. I had to see him in his deck. Moving on to grade 2s, we run 2 copies of Voltec Shred Dragon. Now, when it attacks, if your Vanguard is Dragonic Vanquisher, you can Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and then bind a card from your hand. So, when it attacks, if you're on Vanquisher, that's when it has its really good uses. And the perfect part about it is, say if you have to bind, you Soul Blast 1, you draw a card, so that's a plus, and then you have to bind a card. But if you bind a card like Desert Gunner Bajan here, you call it right back to the field. So it's like in mid-battle, you get multiple attacks because of what you're running in this deck. And it gets a plus, it's a new unit, it's a soul charge because you called that, and it pays for the Soul Blast cost right then and there. And then if Rising Phoenix is in your soul because you wrote it, bam, right there, you can Soul Blast it out. It's in drop zone. You swing, you bind something else, and then bam, you have another attacker right then and there in the middle of battle. We run 1 copy of Dragonic Death Scythe. He's been a staple in Narukami, but, you know, with the new grade 2s we've been getting, we kind of been moving him in and out of the deck. But when he's played Soul Blast 2, bind a front row unit of your opponents, and he gets plus 3k. Until the end of the turn, and then when he attacks, if there's no unit in the same column as him, there's no front row unit in the same column, he gets +5. So he can get +8 on his first turn he's played, and then after that he gets +5 if you keep getting rid of the field. He costs a Soul Blaster 2, but because again with Bijan and other cards in his deck that can put in the soul, you're gonna have the soul for his cost, so it's not a minus really. Moving on, we have 2 copies because of the new ban list. We have 2 copies of Fiendish Sword Eradicator, Choho. Now, Choho was at 4, and because of the new balance, we have to now bring him down to 2. But his skill is when placed, you Counter Blast 1, choose a column, you bind the unit in the front row, and move the unit in the back row to the front row. So that way you can get rid of their field, you can get rid of their front row, you can get a bind from that, you move it so you can get another bind from the front row, you can move them around. So you can get more plays out of that. And then secondly, once a turn, at the end of the battle, your Vanguard attacks. If there's no front row, if your opponent has no front row rear guards, you Counter Blast and restand them. So right there, that's the Counter Blast heavy part. He has 2 Counter Blast skills, so you run a counter charges for him. But you really don't most times I never use his Counter Blast to bind because I can really just use other units that won't cost as much. But he really gets that restand and it helps you get more attacks out. He was brought down to 2 because he's a very powerful unit. So everybody that was like Narukami needed to be hit and they hit this 1 card and bring him down to 2, doesn't really matter because in this set, we got a new unit named Voltage Horn Dragon. Now you got the SP in the regular here. What you see, Voltage Horn Dragon skill is, he has the first skill is the same exact skill as our friend there, Mighty Bolt Dragoon. When a card is bound in a turn, he has +5, so the 14k attacker. But when he attacks a Vanguard, you can Counter Blast 1, choose a column, bind the unit in the front row, and move a unit in the back row to the front row. So it's literally the exact same skill as him, but except for he's on place, whereas he is on attack, so you can use him multiple times over and over again. The only thing is you don't get a restand, but you get +5, so they kind of work each other around. And I like Voltage Horn. He was a staple in original Vanquisher decks, and now he is back in Vanquisher. He has been remade in a new form. As you know, like back in G-Era, I love Vanquisher, and you can see by the back, I have my G-Era Vanquisher Voltage sleeves on them. So we'll move on to the next card. Lastly, rounding up the grade 2s is the biggest staple in any Vanquisher deck, and that is Demonic Dragon Berserker Chatura. He was a staple back in original Vanquisher decks. He was in Narukami decks for a while when he was made in G-Era, and now he is back. His skill is, when an attack hits a Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and then choose a front row unit and bind. Choose an opponent's front row rear guard and bind it, so you get more bind. But here's the real thing about him. When he is bound from your hand during your turn, you can call this card to rear guard, and he gets plus 10 cancel on the turn. So using Vanquisher to bind the card, using Jaggy Shot to bind the card from your hand, using Voltec to bind the card from your hand, you get another attacker who gets plus 10, and he also comes to the field for another big swing. If you're on Vanquisher, Vanquisher powers up your field, so this guy's swinging at a massive, like, he's already swinging at 28k by himself because of all the skills. Plus being on an Excel 2 marker will give you what you need to kind of put your opponent straight through and in the game. So he's a 4-up staple. You need to see him. You don't really need to see him, but when you see him and you can have the combo pieces for him, it's a big plus. Moving on to grade 3s, we have 1 copy of the Tonics Drill and 1 copy of Eradicator Gauntlet Buster Dragon. They were both the VRs for previous sets, and I run them at 1 in this deck just for the chance of doing it. If I see the Tonics Drill real early game or real late game, he is a really good finisher just to end the game right then and there. You can finish him with that, and if you want to ride him first, your opponent usually doesn't build a big field, so you just get another Restanding Vanguard on first ride. It's just a big plus. And everybody knows Gauntlet Buster Dragon. He's been running in the meta for a while, and you know, with the new support, he's gotten even stronger. During your turn, this unit gets plus 5k and plus a crit for each of your opponent's open rear guards front row. So, empty out their front row, he gets big power, big crit. That he's going to be the one your opponent wants to perfect guard. And with these new units, if they do so, they're messing themselves up. They're going to get hurt bad. Also, with his act, you counterblast 1 and discard a card. And when you do so, you can you can move you bind the front row and you move your opponent's front row from the back to the front. It's a really big skill, and it just costs 1 discard cost, which isn't that big of a problem. So running him at 1 is just enough for me to see him, and when I do see him, it is always a plus. You never really minus by not seeing him. This unit really can make a deck shine when he shows up. Like, you're never missing out when you don't see Dragonic Vanquish, when you don't see him there, and without Vanquisher, Gauntlet Buster wouldn't be as strong as he was before. So now moving on, we have here we have 4 copies, running 4 copies of Jaggy Shot Dragoon. When he attacks, if he's on Vanguard or Rear Guard, you bind a card from your hand, you bind an opponent's front row, and then if your opponent has no more front row rear guards, you draw a card. So literally what you do is, when you bind a card from hand, if you bind Chitura, it's a plus, because what you do is simply you swing with this, you bind Chitura, you call Chitura so he gets his plus 10 power, and then you draw a card. So you're plussing because your opponent, if you have no more front row, and then at the end of if he's on rear guard circle, at the end of the battle he attack. You can, if your Vanguard is Vanquisher, you move him in the soul, you draw a card. So literally what you do is, if he's on rear guard and you have Vanquisher, you swing, you bind Chitura or Bajan, you get rid of their last front row, you draw. You call them out, they're another attacker, you end that battle, you move him to soul, and you draw again. So you're getting another unit to field, and you're also plussing 2 in hand. So it's like, this card right here was perfect for Vanquisher. Most people only don't really run it, or they run it at 2. I'm like, no, you need to run it at, I'm running at 4 because, again, this focus of this deck is Vanquisher, and you will see what he does in later videos, because we will be fighting with this deck a lot. Lastly, rounding it off is our main king here, the Dragonic Vanquisher. We run 4 copies of him, including the SVR. Wish I pulled the SSR, but I didn't, but that's okay. Dragonic Vanquisher, his continuous skill is what's really strong, but here goes his regular skill, his other skill, Act. On Vanguard Circle, both Vanguard skills. Counterblast 1, choose a front row rear guard of your opponent's and bind it. So it's okay, so you bind their front row. That's okay, of any player, so you can bind your card or your opponent's card. But the other focus is really, then if you have a grade 3 in Soul, this is where the skill becomes really strong. If you have a grade 3 in Soul, you and your opponent, both of y'all, choose a card in your hand, and we both bind them. So, you get to bind a rear guard of theirs, automatically activating the plus 5k of Mighty Bolt and Voltage Horn. And then, if you have a grade 3 in Soul, which, if you're running him, you can move him into the Soul, or you just ride him, or you ride any other grade 3s, you ride another one, or with Bajan, you Soul Charge, you could probably Soul Charge grade 3 before your first ride to grade 3. So what you do is, you bind a card from their hand. Now, it's like, oh no, you're binding a card from your hand, but with the 2 cards that can bind them, that when they get bound, they call themselves right back, you don't minus, and then, the big thing is, you're minusing your opponent's hand, because that way it's harder for them to guard your turn, they have to drop their cards. In some games I've played against my opponents, and they have had 3 cards, and I'm like, I know you have a perfect guard. I'm using his skill. Now you have to drop the another card, so you literally only have that one perfect guard. So they're pretty much ruined. And then you're binding their front row. So if you're playing against Protect, you're getting rid of the interceptors that they're running with Protect too. So it's really like a really strong unit. Dragonic Vanquisher. His other skill is what makes his power shine. During your turn, if 3 or more units were bound, any card, and 3 or more cards are bound, any player, so from hand, from field, so literally using his skill, you counterblast, you bind their front row, and then you both bind from hand, that's 3 right there. He activates his skill on his own. But if any way possible, even if you don't have the grade 3 Insult, other units are also binding in the middle of the turn and binding your own hand, so you can get them off on first ride anyway. Your front row continuously gets plus 10k for the turn. So that literally powers up every unit on your field. If you're using skills to call out your Torres in mid-battle and Bajan in mid-battle and Rising Phoenix from the drop zone, you're literally making their power go up. Rising Phoenix on an Excel 2 marker literally turns into a 26k beater. It can hit force on its own and it's a grade 1. And that's just the beginning. You can hit a front trigger, a critical trigger, anything to make this deck shine. And with this one skill, you're making this deck hit hard. You're hitting your opponent real early game. We can have early game and late game power. If your field gets wiped, you're going to struggle a little bit, but that's not the problem here because you can rebuild it with this card. You can put them in the soul and draw 2 cards, so you're adding back to your hand. This deck, because of Vanquisher, is going to push your opponent straight into the ground because of the strength that you just get from his own continuous skill. So, that is the deck. Finishing it off, if you want to see markers. I have just, I run, it doesn't matter what I run, but I just wanted to flex on it, Just, Excel 2, you really always want to go Excel 2 with a deck. You hit big numbers on your own. Vanquisher, as you can see, hit big numbers. I have some Excel 1s in here just on the off chance I need them. But no, you always want to go Excel 2 because you get a draw out of it, which gets you another unit. Then you can recover your hand. You can get the plus 5k to another rear guard circle. You can push your opponent into the ground, and that is the way this deck runs. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry I kind of lingered on, but I love this deck so much. I am happy Dragonic Vanquisher is here. Sure, we don't have Thunderstrike, but this makes up for it with the big numbers that you gain. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Tyga, the Common Striders, and as always, Striders out.